Hey everyone, so today's topic is Phalaenopsis. There's a lot of information out there about Phalaenopsis, but I want to just bring it down back to the basics. So my new playlist will start off with this topic called Back to the Basics, Phalaenopsis. Stay tuned. Okay everyone, so I'm Joshua, welcome to the Orchid Den. I want to talk about basics of Phalaenopsis culture. I want to talk about potting mixes, pots or baskets, how much sun do they require, what do I do if they have wrinkled leaves, what do I do about when they have flower spikes, do I stake them, do I let them droop, and what do I do when the flowers are done, and do I cut the spikes, and when do I cut the spikes? So there's many kinds of Phalaenopsis. There's species, there's a million types of hybrids. So how do I know how to take care of each? But if you follow these simple rules, you can take care of any Phalaenopsis, okay? So this is Phalaenopsis cornicervi. And as you can see, I have it in my bark mix, and it's in a basket, and it gets watered every day, guys, okay? So Phalaenopsis love water. You want to choose a potting media that allows them to retain moisture, and not dry out too much, but just enough to where the roots will hold on to that moisture day after day after day and not dry out too much. So you don't want them too wet, but you don't want them too dry either. I know it's very confusing, but stick with me and I'll help you get through that. So Phalaenopsis can be grown in different types of media. You can grow them in sphagnum moss, as you can see with this big bad boy here. So I've got this in a pot, a clay pot with a sphagnum moss in it. And there's another clay pot in the middle. And so I've created a nice Phalaenopsis bouquet, kind of like a culture pot. And I'll put a picture in here that shows this in bloom. These are all white Phalaenopsis, and I created this just last spring, to where it's just phenomenal when it blooms, okay? Other Phalaenopsis, and most Phalaenopsis, you can put in either sphagnum or a bark mix, or even a coconut husk fiber mix, and they'll do just fine. So this is a multicolored. This is the same as the miniature Phalaenopsis as I just showed you, but this is a multicolored flower, and you can see it's got bright green leaves, okay? That shows me it's healthy. It's got 3 new leaves just this growing season, okay? But you can see all the other leaves, they're not wrinkled, they're not damaged or anything, so it's a very healthy Phalaenopsis. You've got other Phalaenopsis, and some might get damaged leaves, okay? This is a fungal issue right here, where it's deep and pitted with a little bit of yellow. I don't know if you guys can see that too well, but you can see that yellow outline there, okay? That's a fungal issue. And just because you get a fungal issue doesn't mean it's going to die. So typically, what I'll do is I'll take some hydrogen peroxide. This is going to be your best friend, okay guys, for any kind of fungal bacterial issues, and you want to spray those leaves. If you have any type of issues, you want to spray those leaves. It'll kill off any kind of fungal or bacterial issues and help that leaf to where it's not going to spread to the rest of the plant. Another thing that I'll do is I'll take my 2.5% bleach rainwater mix and I'll spray it on my leaves. It doesn't harm the plant. It doesn't harm the leaves. It doesn't harm the roots or anything like that. So only 2.5, no more, no less. 2.5% is what I found that kills any kind of bacteria. It's just as good as hydrogen peroxide, okay? But you don't want any more, otherwise you'll burn the leaves and you'll harm the plant. Okay, now for pots and baskets. I grow in a multitude of pots, and sometimes I even grow in baskets. I love my clay pots, but the plastic pots are very good for growing Phalaenopsis. It retains that moisture in the bark mix that I use. It works for me personally. If you want to use something different that you know works for you, by all means use it. It's all about personal growing area, okay? So my greenhouse is very hot and it's very bright. So clay pots work well for me because I water my Phalaenopsis every day, and so that clay pot's gonna take out a lot of that moisture, and then I'm gonna lose a lot of moisture through evaporation also. So with the roots and with the media that I use with the clay pot, it works very well for me. But also the plastic pots work very well as well. So it's all custom to your specific growing area. So don't forget that. It's all about your personalized growing area. If I grow in baskets, I'm going to use something that retains a little bit more moisture. And a lot of times this stuff it's almost like growing bare root. When you grow in a basket, it's almost like growing bare root, okay? So you want something that retains a little bit of moisture, but not over abnormal amounts of moisture. So I won't grow sphagnum moss in a basket with any of my plants. So as you can see, I put a little bit of bark in the bottom, or I'm sorry, I put a little bit of lava rock in the bottom, and then I filled the top with bark. And so that's going to allow my roots to retain a little bit of moisture, but also get very good drainage. And look at that cute little flower. I love it. Corner Cervi variety Chatellate. So you can't go wrong with Phalaenopsis, right? So a popular question is, how much sun do I grow my Phalaenopsis in? And there's a multitude of varieties that you can grow Phalaenopsis in. You can grow them in 1,000, 2,000 foot candles. I grow mine in more of my shady part of my greenhouse, which is over back that way in the corner, okay? They get watered every day, so I want them to dry out a little bit between waterings, but not too much. I want them to stay a little bit moist. But I also don't want them to get too much sun. I don't want them growing like in Cattleya sun, which are like 4,000 foot candles. I want them like 1,000 to 2,000 foot candles. And so they grow in the back corner over here, or in the side, because I have this 3 wide rack of hanging plants, and so back along this edge right here, they get a lot of shade. They'll get a little bit of full sun, not full sun, but 4,000 foot candle sun dappled with very good shade. And I think that's why they grow so well. So that's how much I grow my Phalaenopsis in. You don't want them to burn leaves. If your leaves are getting sunburnt, it's too much sun. If they're not blooming, move them into a little bit more sun. And so there's a big growing area that you can grow Phalaenopsis in. And so there's a low end and a high end. So just anywhere in between, and they'll bloom twice a year for you, okay? So here's one of my Phalaenopsis. It has wrinkled leaves. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but a lot of its leaves are, this was a very sick Phalaenopsis, and it got wrinkled leaves, but yet the leaves aren't yellowing or anything. So don't ever cut your Phalaenopsis leaves unless it's going to be detrimental to your whole plant, okay? So as you can see, there's plenty of new roots on this thing. Very good roots. It's a very healthy plant. It was not a healthy plant about 6 months ago. It was in sphagnum moss. I was growing it inside the house. It stayed too wet, and I moved it back outside because it was in full bloom. I wanted it inside just for blooming reasons. I wanted to see it every day, but that was not the greatest cause for the plant. So it started deteriorating in health, okay? And so I repotted it in a small pot with lots of air movement. As you can see, I've got new roots coming in right there, and it's starting to thrive again. And also I've got a kiki right here, as well as the top new leaves are starting to come out firm and bigger and healthier. So if you have leaves that are wrinkled, don't worry about them. Let them drop on their own, because what happens is the nutrients of the leaves will go back into the plant, and it'll move up to create new growth, and all those nutrients will fill out in the new leaves. So don't cut any green leaves, even though they might be wrinkled. Only cut leaves if they're brown, withered, and it looks like it's got a fungal infection, and do it that way, okay? So a lot of people ask, how do I stake my spikes? And as you can see, the spike will come out on either side of the growth, okay? This is a very healthy Phalaenopsis. I've got firm leaves all the way down. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of leaves, and it's amazing. And I'm getting progressively bigger leaves on each side, okay? Eventually it will start to droop, because that's how Phalaenopsis grow, and you don't ever want to get water in the crown. When you water, it's okay if you get it first, but you want it to evaporate eventually, or you want to come back and just blow it out, okay? It's very easy. Don't overthink it. Let it grow naturally. But I typically grow my spikes straight up, okay? And as you can see, it's very rewarding. So I've got 2 open flowers on this, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in bud. So, and you can tell it's a very healthy Phalaenopsis. It's growing in my bark mix, which is bark, perlite, and charcoal. And if you don't know what my mix is, go check out my other video. I'll put a link up here, and you can watch my video on potting mixes. But as for me, I spike them straight up. Now, while they're forming, some people like to bend them over and have a nice arch. So then the blooms are gonna bloom upside down. But this works for me. My plants are healthy, it's very appealing, and I have nice long spikes, okay? And sometimes you'll even get branching spikes on either side. This plant did branch for me back in December and January, but it's only got 1 single spike here in August, okay? So it just depends. in Phalaenopsis, you can have 2 blooming cycles. One in the spring, early spring, and one later in summer. It just depends on how healthy the plant is, how much light you're giving it, a lot of culture techniques and stuff like that. We'll cover this stuff in a more Phalaenopsis advanced culture techniques, okay? So I'll make another video in advanced culture techniques because we're just covering the basics right now. A lot of people always ask, when should I cut my spike? A spike is a flower spike. After it's done blooming, when do I cut it back? And do I cut it back? There's many opinions on this, okay? You want to cut your spike back after it's done flowering. This is my personal preference. I know a lot of other people that do this. If you want big blooms year after year after year, you'll always cut back your spikes, okay? Because if you don't cut back your spikes and you allow that spike to stay, it's going to put all that energy of the plant, instead of growing roots, growing new plant leaves, it's going to still keep going towards that flower spike. So I always cut my flower spike back about 1 inch above the potting media, or away from the plant, okay? You can see it right here. If you don't cut it back, it's going to put all that energy, like I said, into the flower spike. If you cut it back, then you're going to have new leaf growth, new root growth, and then it's eventually going to send up a new inflorescence or flower spike in either late winter or late summer. So a lot of times I'll get 2 flowering seasons out of my Phalaenopsis. If you don't cut it back, that's fine too. A lot of people want to induce maybe kikis, which are baby plants, that you'll form a baby plant on the inflorescence, and then you'll be able to have 2 plants instead of just 1 plant. That stresses out the plant a lot though. So if you don't cut back the spike and you're wanting flowers on the old spike, the flowers are going to be a little bit more, but they'll be a little bit smaller. I personally like nice big flowers. Even if it's on 1 spike, then I'll see a lot of big flowers on 1 spike and more substance on them if I cut it back after it's done blooming. Okay guys, so that's it for Phalaenopsis Basics 101. If you like my channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you like my other videos, check out my other video right here, okay? Y'all have a great day. Happy growing. See you next time.